Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How are you? Mahalo for tuning in. I'm fortunate to welcome my third guest from the band Yes on the line today with us. One of the great drummers of rock. He's a very laid-back, easygoing cat. I've run into him a few times over the years. His name has for decades been associated with pillars of the genre, from Cream drummer Ginger Baker's Air Force to John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band to playing for George Harrison on All Things Must Pass, drumming for Joe Cocker, and of course, Yes. We welcome him to Hawaii April 27th, Blaisdell Concert Hall, April 29th at the MAC on Maui. It's a pleasure to speak with, from Yes, drum legend, Alan White. Aloha, mahalo, brother Alan. How you doing, dude?
I'm good, man.
Good to talk to
Aloha.
you. Aloha to you. I'm giving you a hug, a high five, and thank you very much for taking a few minutes for me.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's just part of our work.
I know that. Well,
we love to do this anyway.
Just want you to know we're grateful for your time, and we'll talk about the band in a moment. But in terms of Hawaii, you're a West Coast brother too, which is nice. You've matriculated to America in a real hands-on sort of way, I guess I could describe it. And how many times, when you think of Hawaii, have you come out here? What's your memories of Hawaii?
Oh my God, a lot. Let's say I have a good friend that lives on Oahu. He owns a dive shop over there. Name's Jack Aaron, and I stayed at his house usually, and he told me how to dive like at least 25 years ago, probably more. So I know quite a lot of the dive spots around at least Oahu and Maui and places like that. So
I used to, when I was on a commercial rock station here, I did remotes at that guy's store. I know exactly who you're talking about, Jack's Dive Shop.
Yeah. Anyhow, he taught me how to dive. He got me certified and all that kind of stuff. And we had a ball, and just showed me some great things. And he took me some very adventurous diving, like underneath Diamond Head and all that kind of stuff.
Underneath Diamond Head, that's an experience.
Yeah, there's actually a grotto underneath that. I don't know if I'm sure people know, but on the island, if you dive, you go down about 60 feet and through a hole and won't come up inside Diamond Head, and there's like a beach in there, and there's lots of big fish in there. They get trapped in there.
That's cool, dude. You have such a connection, and over the years you've come here to play too. In addition to that, you remember the gig fondly. How do you recall the gig, or do you recall it at all? You've come here so many times, I don't expect you to remember it. But you came in 2003. You played with the symphony here.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
the big show, right?
It was a pretty big show. I thought it was a big show. I mean, it was a good show. You were doing the long songs on that tour.
Yeah.
As I recall. So a lot of the older fans were kind of having their little freak out moment as they heard Close to the Edge and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, well, we like to delve into as many different versions of the songs as we can, and as many eras of the band, because the band's repertoire is so huge now. So we get to choose from a lot of different areas.
What makes it compelling to you these days? I mean, beyond the fact that it's a secure gig and it puts money in your pocket and lets you tour the world and play music that you love and that is great music and you're familiar. I mean, is there other parts of it that inspire you about the current lineup and maybe the set lists that you're putting together?
Yeah, it's just like we're trying to cover a lot of bases here, and we kind of, some of this set is anchored around the new album Fly From Here, and it's a very adventurous kind of thing. There's a suite on the album called Fly From Here, and it's a compilation of like 6 different songs, but it's kind of a story, and the whole thing lasts about half an hour, 35 minutes. And when we play it live on stage from beginning to end, so it's actually the center focus around the set. The rest is all songs that people know us for, like, Heart of the Sunrise and, just things people are going to pick up on. Yeah.
It's such a difficult thing when you do classic rock, which I'm a big fan of, and I know a lot about it. It's a tough market because a lot of the fans are divided. Half the fans do not want to hear anything new; they only want the jukebox. Then you got the group of fans that are like they want the real deep cuts, and they're so sick of the hits. And then, of course, you've got the general public, which only know the really big hits. So you're kind of stuck with these.
Yeah, well, you know what it is it's like we try and please everybody. You know, you can't please everybody, obviously, but we try to cater for a wide variety of our audience in being able to play, radio hit songs that we've had, and then more of the deeper songs that are longer and more intricate and have more in depth to them, and then the good old favorites that people have heard for a long time. So it's a matter of covering all those bases and just trying to make a good show out of it and please everyone, hopefully.
Well, I'm sure, I know you work hard at it, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very pleased to have you return. What made you decide to be residing in Washington State? I've always been curious what inspired that location.
Well, it was a small thing called my wife. Actually, she's not small. She's almost 6 foot tall. But she's my wife Gigi. We've been actually in May it will be 30 years we've been married, which is some kind of record for rock and roll, I think.
It is. Congrats, brother. Congrats for sure. So she drew you there, and she's a Yank. I'm assuming there. And what about that area? I mean, is it besides her? Have you fallen in love with it in general? You kind of made your roots there?
Yeah, well, we met in London. I was actually I had a house near Richard Branson's house, the manor where a lot of albums were recorded in that era, and around the late 70s, early 80s, and she was a friend of the Cooks, and it was like the old story, a friend of the Cook model who's touring Europe, modeling, doing front covers and stuff, and I guess we both just hit it off straight away, and we've been together ever since, basically.
You know, your kid, I almost went to the same son as your school, the same school as your son Jesse, the Full Sail in Florida.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, my son is excelling right now. I'm in LA right now. He lives here, and he's got a great. He's a whiz kid at like computers, and he's designing apps in his spare time now and that kind of stuff. So that fortune I spent on my son at Full Sail, because it's not a cheap school, seems to be paying off now.
Good for you, brother. I high five you. I'm glad that worked out, for sure. I heard that you thought it was flashing back to a pretty historic moment in your life. I heard you thought it was a prank call when John Lennon called you in '69. How had you gotten on his radar?
Oh, it's an old story. I mean, I was like living in a house with a bunch of guys in Wembley, London, and I knew people that worked at Apple and stuff like that, and I was friendly with them, and sometimes I go around Apple headquarters down in the city, but I didn't really know John or George or any of those guys, and I guess John decided he wanted to do the show in Toronto, Canada, and apparently he'd seen me play in a club a couple of days before, and I didn't even know he was there, but I was playing with my own band, the band I was living with, and we played a set, and apparently he came in, and he was there for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and then he left. But he remembered watching me, I guess, and then so he called me up, and I didn't think it was him. I thought it was a friend of mine playing around with me. It was like it was like a weekend in the morning, and that kind of thing. I was waking up. I think I was cooking breakfast or something, and anyhow, I put the phone down, and then I get a call back 5 minutes later saying, "No, this is really John Lennon, and I want you to do a gig. Is it possible? And if so, I'll send a limo to pick you up in the morning." And I almost fell off my seat right there. And then basically, a car came to pick me up. The one side note to this whole thing was my band was really peed off with me because they had a gig that night, and we couldn't do the gig because I was going to go play with John Lennon. So anyhow, that's basically what happened in the very beginning. And we went to Canada, rehearsed on the plane. I had a pair of drumsticks and a few acoustic guitars, and then Eric Clapton was playing guitar, and we got there, and half an hour later went on stage. And so it was a kind of heads down, see after the show kind of thing. It was just all of a sudden we were playing standard songs, and somebody turned and go around and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that was it. You're in. So it was jumping in the deep end, basically.
Was he a fun guy to work for? Do you look back at it?
Oh, yeah. He was a lot of fun to be around. People, sometimes don't see that part of him, but he was a great guy, really studious, and he was funny at the same time, but he knew what he wanted to do. You could tell he had a driven course, and he was very serious about his music. And he kind of, in some ways, kind of took me under his wing. I was obviously a little bit younger than, quite a bit younger than him, and he kind of took me under his wing. He said, "Alan, whatever you're doing, keep playing it." He said, "It's great." And that's all he ever said to me when we were in the studio and stuff. So,
wow, so he didn't provide a lot of direction. That was going to be a question. He let you sort of do your own thing. So the work we hear with him that you did was just... he
just let me do whatever parts I came up with. He just said, "That's great, I'll just keep doing that."
When you say take you under his wing, does that include helping you sort of like in a way, you graduated from performing and recording with him to then doing the work with George? Was that because of him?
Yeah, well, through him, while we were recording Imagine, George would come down and not sit in the sessions, but he'd kind of come for dinner. We'd sit down and I'll have dinner in the evening around 7:30 every night, and George would come and I'd talk to him and John and stuff like that. And when it came to All Things Must Pass, George invited me to be involved. So, and with that album, there was like 3 different drummers, but, the different ones came at different days. But I was there both days, actually, and then we decided who was playing what on what song kind of thing. So... It's funny because it was kind of like being part of the Beatles family, as it were. And once you accepted into that, I just became part of the scenery,
Right, yeah, I get that part of the scenery. They just are used to seeing you around. So are you saying that your professional engagements with Lennon and Harrison led to friendships with these cats over the rest of...
Yeah, I was pretty friendly with both of the guys. I think actually, in a way, well, with George too. He was such a sweet guy, and so was John. But George is just one of those guys who wouldn't hurt a mouse. I mean, he was really great to talk to, very, very light spoken, and was just really, really nice to people.
You never visited him. Did you ever visit him in Maui? He lived out here, too.
No. Well, when I got involved with Yes and stuff, I pretty much was solidly into Yes, and we were touring all the time. I really didn't have time to do anything else but Yes. And basically... July this year, I've been in the band 4 years, so it's been a lot of work.
Yes, it has. No, that'll keep a man busy. As a final question for you before I let you go, drummers. I play drums too, Brother Alan, and I always like to have a little moment where I ask a drummer what his 2 favorite drummers are. You don't have to say 2, but who your favorites, and I'll tell you who my favorites are too. We'll swap drummers. So tell me, who are the all-time favorites?
Well, people ask that question of me a lot, and I always try and associate the fact that I have a lot of guys that I really respect and like as drummers, but they're all good in their own fields, and they're all slightly different players. But really articulate and good in what they do. I mean, I listen to a lot of guys like Lenny White and Alphonse Mouzon. I used to listen a lot to those guys, and in fact, use kind of some of the approaches that they did in some of my playing. And So a lot of that kind of stuff from early on. But nowadays, the guy from Dream Theater is great. He's a good friend. And all those guys, they've all got their own styles and a particular kind of music that they play. So there's tons of them. You can tell me yours, though.
Well, mine are going to be so limited compared to you, dude, because I'm a radio DJ, and drumming's really just a minor thing. But my two favorites would be, Alan, would have to be John Bonham and Cozy Powell.
There you go. Well, you like the hard hitter guys.
I do. I like the Animals.
Yeah, but not only were they hard hitters, but they were also very articulate, and they could play a lot of really great stuff, especially Bonham with some of the bass drum work he worked out. That was great. And, Steve Gadd is the master of simple stuff. So there's all kinds of areas, you can look at. And I listen to all of them and kind of pull things off them. And it's funny, I met Neil Peart once, and we were talking, and he said, and I said, great, see, and I said, look, because sometimes our styles get associated in some areas, right? And he said, I did rip a couple of things off because there's a couple of things you did that I thought were really great, so I kind of used them. He said, don't worry, I ripped you off too. So it was kind of a mutual thing.
I love that kind of talk. That's good stuff. So my choices didn't let you down, Brother Alan. My guys are all right. Yeah, John and Cozy, they're good people, yeah?
Yeah.
They're up in heaven. They're watching us. They're listening to us, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I give you a high five and a hug, brother. I appreciate it, you being patient with me like that. And I look forward to seeing you. Do everything I can to support your shows. I hope this wasn't a hassle doing this interview.
All right, no problem.
It was fun. And be safe. And I'll see you guys when you come to town. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Aloha.